Creative Katie's Mixed Media Technique Tags series. Come join my Facebook group, All Things Mixed Media Creative Katie, and share your experiences with the tag. Come join the creation ships. On Instagram and social media, hashtag Mixed Media Technique Tags 2017, hashtag Creative Katie. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, that way you won't miss any upcoming technique tags or anything else I'm up to. Mixed Media Technique Tag number 5, removing color through a stencil. Here's a sneak peek of the tags that get created using this technique.
Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill. Today we are going to do a mixed media technique tag in the category of pattern. You could also place this one in the texture category because you do create visual texture, but I think it's more about the pattern, so that's where I'm going to put it. So just as a reminder, if you haven't been following, the first technique tag, mixed media technique tag number 1, was using creating your own designer tissue paper. And if you haven't done that, check out the video. I'll put a link to it and you can make your own tags and find out what's going on. So in this category, now as you can see, I have gessoed all these 3 tags. Put a layer of white gesso on them. And I did that because I did some experimenting ahead of time. I did a little bit of research ahead of time. The technique that we are going to do is, I'm not sure on the exact name because it's called different things. We are basically going to be removing color medium through a stencil. And I believe this technique, where we're adding pattern by removing paint, was first done by Diane Reevely with her Dilution sprays. So of course I had to ask the question, can this work on other color mediums that we use? So before I sat down to do this video, I thought, okay, do I need to gesso the surface or not? Because I know Diane in her videos, you know, she sprays right on her Dilutions journals with the Dilutions paint sprays, and she doesn't gesso. And I wanted to get the best effect. So I took all my color mediums and I did an experiment where I have a non-gesso side and a gesso side to see what I would get. And I'm going to put the results of this with the pictures on to my blog. But suffices to say that with all the color mediums that I have, gelatos, distress crayons, Liquitex basic paints, sprays, Neocolor 2s, Dilutions paints, all of them did better when there was a coat of gesso applied. So for the purpose of the tags, that's what I'm recommending. Now the paper that I used here, you know, it was mixed media paper. This is manila tag. It may have reacted differently. The Dilutions journal, again, may react differently than mixed media paper. So to be sure, you may want to duplicate this experiment using the paper that you typically use. Okay, so it may not be the tags, but I'm recommending to get better results or to put a coat of white gesso underneath them. So as you can see, I've just drawn a line into having it because I have so many color mediums and I want to share them all with you in there. Now, so for this one, we're going to use 2 water-soluble products, gelatos or gel sticks, which is what I have, and the distress crayons. So I'm just going to apply them. Now with this, there is no real time. With some of the other products, you need to act quickly, and I will tell you about those. So that's something that we're going to have to make sure we put at the back if there's a time limit or not. So on this one, it doesn't really matter how I put on the paint or not. So I'm just going to put the gelatos at the top, and I've got some metallic ones here. And I'm just going to mix a bunch of blue and green. Now, how you put on the gesso is going to have an impact on adding a little bit of texture here, because you can see if I hold that up, you can see some of the brush strokes. I don't mind that. If you don't like that, you may want to choose to apply the gesso with a different medium, with a credit card or a palette knife. Now you could use a baby wipe and you could wet your finger a little bit. Someone had indicated in one of the videos that they saw me struggling with my gelato, said to not blend with water. To get really vivid colors, just, you know, blend straight from the tube. So that's what I'm doing here. I wouldn't want to put too much water on this, and it's just going to be a safe. So I'm just going to use a baby wipe and get rid of that off my fingers so that I can, oops, move to my gel sticks. Now I've gone on record, I'm not a big fan of the gelatos or the gel sticks. I bought them, had to have them. The distress crayons seem to be creamier and more me. I only have a couple, 3, 4 colors, and now with them, to activate them, you do have to, it's a little time sensitive to blend. You need to do it sooner or later, but in some of his latest videos, he says if it dries and it doesn't move, if you apply any more distress crayon on top of it, it will then kind of get everything going again, if that makes sense. And I think that was something at Creativation this year that was brought out that I saw him doing in some of his videos. But I like how they blend. And again, this is on gesso. Okay, so I'm just going to put this away and I will come back and we will do the addition by removing through a stencil. Okay, so this is more dry. This feels very waxy. Different products. So what I'm grabbing is a stencil. Now you can pull it off, you know, across the whole background, put the whole stencil on there and pull it off and get that. Or you could just do bits and parts of it. The size of the stencil, you'd have to play around to see which is going to work better and stuff. So with the different tags, I'm going to do it differently, and you can do different stencils as well. So now, depending on how dry your baby wipe is, you can take the paint off, or the crayon, through some of it. You know, you can leave it. If your baby wipe is very, very wet, you may want to take it into a paper towel and squeeze out some of the moisture. But as you can see, the gelatos, this is coming off fairly easy, no difficulty at all. I'm not applying, you know, I'm just kind of moving this around. And you can see the effect that you get. So on the bottom, I have the scale. It's kind of it's a little harder to get them going. And I'm not putting pressure. This reminds me, if I was doing a mermaid, this stencil would be good in removing to get some color there. This is not very wet. I'm just going to wet it a little bit more. Oh, there we go. So you can play with the level of moisture, the pressure that you're putting. And there you have it. So on the top we have the gelato, which removes very, very easily and very quickly. Problem with gelatos, they're very difficult to write on unless you seal them. They will always be water soluble. Same thing with the distress, but you have to actually put pressure on it to remove it, to activate it, the distress crayons. This isn't as waxy as this, so this is going to be a little bit easier to draw on later. So that's tag number 1. So tag number 2, we are going to use, now that will work as well with the Neocolor 2s, water-soluble crayons. There are different varieties of the water-soluble crayons, and if you have a different brand, all you got to do is try it. Try it with gesso or without and see what you get. So the next tag, we're going to do it with Inktense blocks on the one half and Distress ink on the other. Now, Inktense blocks are permanent when completely activated and completely dry. Distress inks are going to be water activated forever. So you got to know that for what you put in the upcoming layers. So I'm going to grab my supplies and I will be back. Now, I don't know if this would work with the Inktense blocks if you did this today and then waited weeks or a week to do the removal technique. I don't know. You'd have to try that. But I don't think, it's not time sensitive, right, as in here, as in we need to only do it. So I only have a couple colors of the Distress inks. I have a red and I have a yellow, so I'm just going to blend those on here. This was another product that I had to have, and I just haven't particularly used. So I'm just going to build up some layers here. And kind of let that dry. So while that is drying, I'm just going to to activate this, I need to spritz it with a little bit of water and move it around with my finger. If I wanted more distinct colors, I wouldn't blend. I'm going for a blend here. I want some interesting color. And I'm just going to give this a dry. So again, the different mediums, you get a different initial look, which is nice to see how it's going to work once you do the depending on the type of stencil, like we found here, you're going to have a nicer or a more desirable effect. And again, that's up to personal choice too. So you're going to have to play around with the size of the stencil and the type of stencil. So that's pretty dry. So I'm just going to grab this one. Now this is a very wet baby wipe, so I'm going to, as I suggested, just put it in the paper towel and get some of the moisture out. So I'm just going to, and again, you can just see how quickly I could even have a drier baby wipe. This is very quickly taking off. Okay, so there you have it. Now, if your baby wipe is too wet, you see how I have the little bit of marks there? Now, I don't mind that. It kind of adds to the overall. I'm just gonna, can even take, you know, kind of take off through several different stencils and see what you get. So you can build up, take off more or less, and you get even the layers of texture. So I'm just going to put that there. I'm going to pick a different section. So it's a little harder, little more difficult to get the Inktense blocks to come off. You have to work a little harder, but I don't mind that because then I'm in more control over, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, I'm more in control of how much I'm taking off. Like here it was kind of like instant. And it's not, one's not better or worse, it's simply a matter of what effect do you like. Are you getting what you like? So you can play with it and do different things and get some different textures. And you can go back in. Move the stencil around, get different layers. Till you get what you like. I have an idea. I didn't like how that pattern, how this one worked. So I'm going to try a different one, but I'm just going to go back in and put some more Distress ink on here. Still have these out. See what happens. You know, if you don't like it, give that a quick dry. And I'm going to take even more moisture out of this. I want to not take away so much. You can see that it's getting, you cannot see, but trust me, it's water's coming through. So I'm going to put this on. You know, you have to play with the stencil and the effect that you want, and it's going to depend on what's going on your page sometimes. Yeah, there, that gives it a much better look. And stuff. Sometimes it kind of melds out, the water reactivates it and gets softer, so you can play with that. So that is more effective. Speaking of that, I'm going to go back here. I'm not happy with this one either. So I'm just going to use its qualities against it and reactivate it. And no, I don't want the dark blue. There we are. I think that's one of the things I'm known for. People comment, you know, you're not afraid to just show us your mistakes. No, that's what it's all about. I make lots of mistakes. That's how I learn. I ask questions, I try things. Okay. So I'm just going to use this one. This technique is going to work with all the products that I'm showing you. It's just a matter of maybe selecting the right stencil. To get the right effect. But I don't want you to see an ugly job that I did and think, oh, this product doesn't do this technique. No, every one of these products that I'm showing you will do this technique. You may try some of yours and discover that it doesn't. That's up to you. So there you go. Different effect. But it does work on both of them. So we have Distress Inks, blocks, gelatos, and Distress crayons. So now we're going to move into the world of acrylics. Now, because the acrylics are permanent when dry, you do have to work rather quickly to get the effect that you want. And it is going to be a slightly different effect. The dilutions paints are a little bit more forgiving. You have a little bit more open time than the Liquitex Basics. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to only do one half at a time. I'm not going to do both because once I have the Liquitex Basics, I have to have my stencil. Ready to go. And I think I'm not going to use this stencil. Going to use this one. And I wouldn't recommend doing this on a page and doing the whole background. You could, with these, do a whole background and remove the whole page because there isn't a time limit. You can do work at your leisure. Here, once the Liquitex Basics dries, it's over. You're done. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put my colors here. Oh, I don't think. This is why I bought these little tubes and I've had them for a while, so I'm trying to use them up. As you can see, they kind of, I don't want to use that one. That one's a little globby. So I've set them on my desk and it's like, use them. There we go. So I'm and I want to keep this wet. And I just might add a little bit of water. It's important that you keep this wet. So you kind of need to know what you're doing, how you're going to do it. Yeah, adding that little bit of water really helped. Okay, so put that there. Now, I'm putting that, and it is going to stick to the paint underneath. Absolutely. Now, and I'm just rubbing it through the stencil. And you're right, the back of the stencil is going to get full of paint. Okay, so I'm pulled that through. I'm going to lift this up. And you can't really see too much here, but on the sides where the stencil connected with the wet paint, it did create some texture. And you can see that more here, where you can see you've just added texture, which I love. It's kind of like a twofer. So there you have it. You're removing paint through a stencil. Okay, so as you can see, I've got my paints, and I'm just going to put that on, and I am going to build layers here. You do have time while this is not quite perfectly dry. You know, it doesn't have to be as wet as the other acrylic paints to get the effect that you want through the stencil. So I'm just going to use the same stencil and apply it through. Even when the Dilutions paints, if it is a little bit drier, you do have some wiggle room to get it off. Get the paint off. It will still do that. And so very much, you do not necessarily get that texture. Like here, you can see the texture where the stencil touched the paint. Here you don't, because some of it may have been drier. Okay, so I am going to clean it up, and I'm going to show you a bonus thing. I had an idea about acrylic paints that we can use the fact that they dry and that are permanent to our advantage with this technique. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we're just about done. Category pattern, technique, removing color through a stencil. And we're testing out whatever color mediums you have. So here we had the gelatos, distress crayons, distress ink, Inktense blocks, Dilutions paints, and Liquitex basics. The only thing that you need to remember here and make mark of is that the acrylic paints, be it Dilutions, craft paint, Liquitex basics, the open time that you can remove the paint is limited. So you need to act faster. With these other mediums, these other 4 mediums, because they are water activated, you can do larger areas at a time and you do not have to rush. So I'm going to take pictures of the summary, the 3 summaries on here, and I'm sorry for the glare there. The summaries, like I said, the only thing to note is with the acrylic paint, do sections at a time and do it more immediately. So thank you very much for joining me for Technique Tag, Mixed Media Technique Tag number 5 in the pattern category. We'll see you for the next Technique Tag number 6. I wonder what category that will be. Bye for now.
So here are the 3 tags that got created using this technique. I rather enjoy this technique and I think I need to use it more. At the top we have gelatos, bottom distressed crayons. Neocolor 2s will work much the same way. You can stop the video to copy the back summary if you desire. Top is distress ink, bottom is Inktense blocks. And the summary. The top here is Dilutions Paints, and the bottom is Liquitex Basics. And the summary. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey. See you next time for the next Mixed Media Technique Tag.